can we cover off as comprehensively as possible how IP will be owned and shared with investors whose ideas are going in as the products we are evaluating? So I might open this one up for Doug to provide some direction on.
Sure, MJ. The simple answer is it depends. So it depends on the specific example. Generally speaking, where the MLA is involved, our basic principle, operating principle is kind of, we set our sight on the end game. The end game is, if we're representing Commonwealth funds through the MLA donor company in supporting these products, our number one objective is ensuring that these products are in Australia to the benefit of the Australian red meat industry. That is our guiding light. Now, if there are IP owners who obviously have no commercialisation interest in Australia, well, they're not welcome to invest to attract the MLA investment. If there are, now we appreciate there's also complications around background intellectual property. So if there's background intellectual property in the form of a patent, an existing patent, know-how, physical technology that's legally defendable, any improvements to that intellectual property can remain under the ownership of the party that brought them into the project. And so we would acknowledge that as background intellectual property. Any improvements, any intellectual property that's created through the project investment, the default position is either MLA owns it 100% so that we can simplify the path to commercialisation, or if there's a commercial partner involved in the project who has a strategic interest, and very importantly has the ability to commercialise, so they've got a proven track record at commercialising that product, for example, we're happy to assign the commercialisation rights to that third party, and MLA will be out of the way. So they're just some basic principles under which we operate. But again, we're just going to make sure the technology is in Australia, and we want to simplify the commercialisation pathway as much as possible. So I might just pause there. Roger, I see your hands up. Perhaps you might like to provide a specific example, or perhaps I haven't answered your question appropriately.
No, look, it's been helpful. Thank you, Doug. I guess it's just in general, the federal government, when it's funding research through things like ARC, etc., it doesn't try and hold on to it, the IP. If this was levy money, I could see that MLA as the representative of that or distributor of that levy money would want to see their levy return. But I guess I just want to encourage you to not try and hold on to IP. It would certainly not facilitate the process at all. It would only hinder the process towards getting the product delivered. So I'd, yeah, in keeping with an ARC approach where the federal money doesn't try to hold IP, I wouldn't, an MLA isn't putting any of its own money in here and you're getting the 8 to 10%, 8 to 12% or whatever back out of the Fed money. I just encourage MLA to say, look, we want to have a hands-off in terms of IP, and we just want the product out there. And obviously you don't want to help people develop a product for the US or Guatemala or Greenland or something. But if it's people that are trying to develop it for Australia, I just encourage a hands-off approach for big players as well as for small players. I think the sting is there for each of them. So as I say, different case if it was levy money, but since it's Fed money, I'd just encourage a hands-off approach to IP. That'll certainly facilitate the process and getting things in. Otherwise, people won't put them in. Thank you.
So I'd expect, Roger, given the emphasis of this program is getting new commercial technology in the market, the intellectual property exists already. So I think it's a moot point, to be honest. If we're trying to build a product from scratch, we're not going to get it in 3 years. So then we've got to ask ourselves the question, why are we investing in it if we've got a pretty clear time frame for getting these products in the market? So I think it's, again, I think that happy to take the conversation offline, but I think the simple message is it always depends. It depends on the case. So it's a case-by-case analysis. But again, our basic principle is fully supportive. We want the technology in Australia. We want it to be commercialised in the red meat industry. MLA's efforts are always well intended to try and help, not hinder. And I guess the way in which we approach that is just putting cards on tables from the get-go, making good decisions as best as possible. And one of the key decisions is who's the best party to actually house the intellectual property. Let's have that conversation earlier rather than later. Okay. And as I say, if it's existing intellectual property, it remains under the ownership of the party who brought it to the project. So it's a moot point anyway. MLA's not in the way.
Thanks, Roger and Doug. I'll move down to Richard's comment. Richard, it's just a comment, not a question, but it's on timelines. And Richard, you're not the only person who's brought this up. So we are asking for full proposals to be due right at the start of the new working year, really, which there are a number of challenges to. The reason why we chose that date was really because we're very focused on getting these contracts processed and ready so that we can begin work in the new financial year. And it's probably ordinarily ample time, giving 2 months to prepare a full proposal, but it's the time of the year which is a challenge. I'll hand over to Doug to comment in a second, but I also just wanted to make the point that we really do want to help you develop full proposals that will be received favourably by our approvals committees at MLA. And so it would be good if that timeline really is too challenging to line up investment and to get approvals from your respective organisations, then we'd still really want to ensure that people are working on them so that MLA have an opportunity to ensure that when they do come in as full final proposals, that there's no more tweaking and additions and amendments to scope that need to be required. So if we can have an opportunity to ensure that when they do come in, if that's going to be later than the 29th of January date, that they're really ready to go, then that would be ideal. But I would suggest we stick with that timeline for now, with the knowledge that it's likely we will be able to be flexible with that timeline. But I'll hand over to Doug, who may completely disagree with that.
So this is also, you know, there are trade-offs to any decisions we make. Again, our basic principle is we want the highest quality proposals that we can get. Our insights from this group are that we're not going to get high quality proposals because can't get access to certain people over certain periods of time or important time in the proposal's development. Happy to consider that request, but just understand there will be trade-offs, and the trade-offs are also mainly driven by the investment ask. So MLA has a very clear governance framework under which we make decisions, and one of the key aspects of that framework is the financial delegation. And a financial delegation is attributed based on an investment ask. So you might like to take some notes on this, and then Margaret can circulate some commentary after. If your investment ask, so total project investment ask, all funders, including MLA and the co-contributors you put together. So the ask of all investors, if that's under $250,000, MLA can review and approve that fairly rapidly. We can review within a couple of weeks, contract in a couple of weeks. So you're looking at a 4 to 6 week turnaround. If the investment ask is under $750,000, timeframes are also largely consistent with that. You can kind of get a contract in and out of the system within 6 to 8 weeks. If the investment ask is up to $2.5 million, you've got two options. You've either got to get your submission into us by the 12th of February, or you've got to get it into us by the 19th of March. Otherwise, we're just not going to get investment out the door this financial year. And if we don't allocate the funds that we've said we're going to allocate this financial year, as program managers, Margaret and myself, we failed. So they're the trade-offs. You then put Margaret and myself in a bit of hot water. That's okay, but we take the hit for the team if that's what the team tells us we need to do. If the investment ask is under 5 million, the proposals either need to be due on the 22nd of February or the 12th of April, because we've got to get them through to our management leadership team. If the investment ask is over 5 million, you've got to have your submission into us by the 12th of March or the 3rd of April. If it's the 3rd of April, Buckley's chance of getting money invested this year. And so we'll be leaving budget on the table this financial year. So I'm just giving you full transparency around how we operate in making investment decisions. Now, as I say, we want to support you guys as much as possible, but just know that there are trade-offs. The longer you lead it, we have fiscal cycles under which we've got to invest funds. So I hope that's helpful. We will issue that again in writing. But again, and it's a bit of a cop-out. I'm sorry if it sounds like a bit of a cop-out, but the but is depends on the investment ask. So we understand each investment ask is going to vary. We will have some proposals that might be under 250K. We might have some that are more than 5 mil. And the decision-making logic and the reviews required varies depending upon that investment ask, which is why we said on end of Feb, we want to push that out. So maybe Rich, if you'd like to come off mute, if it's if end of January is too tight, what's a sensible time frame?
Doug, time to comment there. The research team, if they're mad enough, can work all the way through the holiday. It's not really about the research team. I think we'll have our act together. It's just I know our bean counters, our administrators, don't work from mid-December to mid-January, and so if we don't finish the proposal before the 14th of December, they're just not going to process it until the end of January, because they'll have the big ones queued up when they first get back. And by the 28th of January, they will be processing the multi-million-dollar contracts that are due, and ours will get shafted to the end. I just know. But the timelines you've given into February, I think that's reasonable. I think we could be aiming for somewhere around the first 2 weeks of February to have something through our research office. I'm just being realistic. We can write all the words we can as a project team. We just have a bottleneck with getting it through our administration systems.
So are you saying
it's not about us? It's not about
all good. No, it's everyone's involved. That includes your administration, includes our administration. So everyone's kind of caught in the same bucket here. So is what you're saying mid-February would be more appropriate?
For a project like the IMS, I think we could aim to have it to our research office by, say, the 3rd week of January, but it lands in a huge queue. So we could get it through them by mid-February would be a more realistic target for us to get it through.
So that Friday the 12th or Monday the 15th or Friday the 19th?
Monday the 15th.
Monday the 15th.
Yeah, is that still doable? I mean, we're talking about the IMS. We're not talking about as big a program as some of the NLMP ones. I think it's a fairly modest sized project compared to the others.
No worries. So we're making adjustments on the fly here, but that's okay. We don't have opportunities to get the group together, so we're happy to do that. What do others think? Is that if we moved it to the 15th of February, you're welcome to. Anyone else who would like to submit prior, you're welcome to, obviously. Because as Margaret has communicated, we're going to be contracting these investments individually anyway. So we don't have to present them as an aggregate. We can present them as they're presented to us for review and contracting. It's from a program management perspective, though, we're just trying to map everything out, coordinate, join all the dots, make sure individual investments are coordinated and adding value to each other before we start to put them into our system. So Margaret or Kayleen, any reasons why we, off the top of your head, we couldn't push that submission date to the Monday, the 15th of February?
I'm happy to do that, but I'll just reiterate the comment that if you can send us drafts earlier so that we can have an opportunity to provide feedback ahead, then that'll be fantastic. All that's going to do is reduce the amount of time that we take to get it through our approvals process. So if you're able to show us a draft earlier, then that would be very welcome, and we'll do what we can to give you some good feedback on that.
I'm just going to scan through any comments there as Rich and I were talking. So I see Jude Bonds made a comment, agree, takes time to process. Jude, would the 15th of February work for you? If you're not able to talk, maybe you could just add a comment there in the chat box.
I'll speak to my managers and directors and try and work out how soon they have to have it for me to be ready. And then if that's realistic, to pass it on to you. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, it's probably worth thinking about now.
Yeah. No worries. Like I say, guys, we want to help you. We don't want to be putting everyone under too much pressure. We appreciate you've got a few jobs to do. Okay, so it looks like we've dealt with that statement. Margaret, what have we got next?
Just working through the list now. I think that the only other comment in the chat at the moment is around the green feeds. Do we want to have that discussion now, or shall we note that there needs to be an additional meeting, and if so, who needs to be involved in that meeting?
Can we have that meeting some other time? Because I've got to jump off in some minutes, and I think most of us do.
Yep.
And I think it's worth spending some time on, given the scale of likely investment.
No problem. So what
if you don't mind, Margaret, sorry.
No, that's fine with me, Ben. So I might just liaise with the area leads about that to set up a meeting, and we'll aim to do that next week or the week after.
But please include us as well, as I'm sure you would.
We'll do. We'll include everybody in the invitation.
Yeah.
So I guess I'd be happy to wrap this up, everybody, if people need to go. The last agenda item was to just talk about next steps. So obviously a next step immediately following this is for us to set up a meeting to discuss green feeds. I think another next step is for us to formally extend the due date for full proposal submissions to the 15th of February. And I will also send out the slides that I presented and with permission slides from the other areas as well, and the product profile and partner profile template. And I'll send a link just to this group with the video from today as well. Does anybody want to make any other final comments?
No, just to say thank you very much. I thought that was a very useful meeting, and thanks for your flexibility on timelines. I think all of us are quietly saying thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
And Margaret, just a comment there.
We'd understand. We'd expect that there's a number of you who would like to reach out to some of the co-presenters today. So, obviously sitting here very intently, looking at some common ideas to some extent. So, seize the moment. I'll say again, be brave and reach out, pick up the phone, set up a meeting, reach out to someone who might be looking to do something similar and add value. Don't put in the same proposal, do the same thing. Organise yourselves, figure out who's got unique capabilities that might be honest and upfront about it. Perhaps someone else does have a better capacity or knowledge area than you, but you can contribute in some other way. Align yourselves, collaborate, So we're all in it together. So I encourage you to pick up the phone and build those relationships now. If you would like Margaret, myself, or Kayleen to help facilitate those discussions with your area leads, happy to do that. And also, if there's been an aha moment today where you perhaps you feel that there's a party who you might like to pull into this group, it's not a closed shop either. So you do have the opportunity to bring in wide expertise, particularly as you're fleshing out the product profiles and the partner profiles. You're probably going to have some light bulb moments along that journey as well.